with this, and one of the nice things about it is you can participate too. You can send in questions, comments as we go through. This will be a relatively shorter live stream compared to what we've done in the past, probably just about 15 minutes or so, something like that. We've actually dragged in a couple of our regular customers here. Quick shot, but you can't really see it because they don't like to be on camera. And a couple of employees to take part in this too, because we're going to be making some tea. Some of you folks know that I just got back from India, a tea trip to India about 2 weeks ago. I spent a little over 2 weeks in India. When I make these trips, I really have two purposes when I make these trips. Number one, I'm looking to source tea. And sometimes that's a question of building long-term relationships that take 4 or 5 years to develop and come to fruition. And sometimes it's like, I want that tea, I want it now, give me a duffel bag, I'll take it back with me on the plane. And it's a combination of those. The second reason I go on these trips is to learn about tea. Because there's a lot of people who know a lot more about tea than I do, and every trip I learn something new. This last trip to India, I learned something very new, and it kind of is almost embarrassing that I didn't know anything about it. Every time that I stopped at a tea place, it could be visiting a tea garden, it could be visiting the offices of a tea broker, it could be a tea stall on the streets of Calcutta. Every single time I stopped at any sort of tea place, of course, number one, I'm a Westerner, I'm a white guy. You know, they're all excited and they really roll out the carpet for hospitality. And of course they ask, would you like tea? And of course I say, yeah, I would love some tea. And invariably, and I spent most of this trip in northern India, invariably the next question would be, would you like black tea or milk tea? And this totally gave me pause. Great look of questioning and puzzlement on your face, Tom. That's how I looked, especially the first time. Would you like black tea or milk tea? And I didn't really want to look like an idiot, but I kind of, my mind is going, milk tea, milk tea. Do they mean tea with lots of milk? And I finally just said, tea with milk on the side? No, Indian milk tea. And I just said, okay, I don't know what that is. And they explained it. Of course I chose it because I didn't know what it was. And it's always fun to try things you don't know. And once I tried it, at the next place when they would offer black tea or milk tea, I'd say, oh yeah, milk tea please. And the next, oh yeah, milk tea, that would be great. And I started going into the kitchens to see how they made this milk tea. Because it's really, really yummy, in a word. And so it was almost embarrassing sometimes. Can I go in the kitchen and watch how you guys make milk tea? It was that kitchen of a tea garden cafeteria, or watching the secretary at the tea broker's office, in the break room making milk tea. I had never heard of it before. I'd heard the phrase vaguely, and there's a Japanese product that came out in the 60s under the name Royal Milk Tea by Lipton. It was just a fancy name. And there are things out there some people call bubble tea milk tea. But Indian milk tea is totally different than anything I'd ever had before. And particularly, the method of preparation is very different than anything I'd ever seen before. So I learned how to do it, bringing it back and trying to share it with some folks who may not have run across milk tea before. And I have no doubt there are people watching who will watch this that grew up with this and they know all about it and they know 10 times more than I do, and that's great. And you're welcome to offer comments. One thing we're going to do in about within the next 2 or 3 weeks on our blog, Beyond the Leaf at WordPress.com, we'll also do a tutorial on how to make Indian milk tea with a series of photos and step-by-step directions. And if you have experience with milk tea, or you do some experimenting with milk tea, feel free to add some comments onto the blog. So with that, let's make some milk tea, as they do in northern India, and as I had numerous times. The first thing to know about milk tea, not surprisingly, it's made with milk. But a little surprisingly, it's made with 100% milk, no water at all. So it's very different than chai or masala chai. I'm using 100% milk. I'm using whole milk. My guess is it would work okay with 2% skim. Might be a little bit thinner. My guess is actually almond milk would work okay with it too if you're non-dairy. If someone wants to try this, please try it and let us know on the blog if it turns out in the comments section. So you start off, and the tea is made with 100% milk. And every place I went, they already had a whole pot of milk simmering on the stove in the back. They had a whole pot simmering there, just kind of ready for the next person who would want milk tea. And what they would do if someone came in and said, yeah, we'd like to get 2 cups of milk tea, and whether this was in an office or at a tea garden, they would dollop out, or they'd ladle out 2 cups of milk tea. and they put it into a second saucepan, and then the most freaky part about this whole thing to me, they would bring that second pot of milk, pure 100% milk, to a full, rolling, furious boil. I mean, like boil, toil and trouble kind of boil, just really furiously boil. And I don't know if it's just grown up in America, I didn't know you could boil milk. I thought you couldn't boil milk because it would curdle and all this terrible stuff would happen. But they insisted that's one of the keys to making Indian milk tea, is to bring the tea to a boil. So that's what I'm going to do right now. This has been simmering for probably about 5 minutes, relatively low heat. I'm going to bring it up to where it's actually boiling and the bubbles are breaking the surface. And then I'm going to add the tea. Tea. And when you make milk tea, one thing to realize about milk tea, it is definitely an everyman tea. This is not, you know, first flush Darjeeling or something super expensive. It's an everyman, common day kind of tea. But it's more than a little unusual. So the kind of tea they typically use when they make milk tea is an inexpensive Assam. An Assam that might be used for the base in a chai. And typically they would use a CTC Assam, crushed hair curl, and that's what we have here. Oop, and it's just starting to go. So I'm going to add my tea and then I'll talk about the Assam a little bit. It's just starting to bubble right now. So I'm going to give it a quick stir. And as it goes, you do want to kind of stir it a little bit, otherwise you will get some separation. And you make milk tea, it's a strong tea. So after experimenting, I kind of learned I want to make it about double strength. So we're making 3 cups of tea, so I'm going to add 3 teaspoons. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You want to make it double strength. I'm going to add 6 teaspoons. And it is starting to go. Is that 6? Was it? What the heck, I'm going to add another one. And it is starting to go. And we're not talking wimpy bubbling here. We're talking really furiously bubbling here. You've got to keep an eye on it, as I did the first time I tried this at home, much to my daughter's delight when it went all over the stove. You kind of, I mean, you really, you can see it rolling and tumbling and turning in there. You really get it going. And, you know, it doesn't ruin the milk. It doesn't turn it weird. It doesn't curdle it. But it really surprised me. And even more surprising was they boiled it for a while. They boiled it for a matter of a few minutes at least. I'm just going to keep this going. This is still bubbling and rolling. Every once in a while I'll come over and I'll give it a stir and I'll lift it off and it looks like it's about to boil out and bubble out of the pot. But I'm just going to keep it going here for another minute or two at least. And you can see it is just boiling furiously in there. CTC Assam. You guys take a smell of that. Isn't that wonderful? This tea was made on March 21st. So this tea was made about 30. I was there when they made the tea. And after they made the tea that morning, we went and had milk tea made from this very tea. I'm going to still let that go for another minute or so. And again, of course, there is sugar. So and again, it's double strength, so I'm going to add 6 teaspoons of sugar. But it's 3 cups. 3, 4, 5, 6. It's double everything. What seems to work really well. And I just want to get this really going again, at least once more. So we're probably letting this go boil, literally boil for about, what, 3 minutes? Is that about where we're at so far, Timothy?
Sounds about right.
And I just want to get it going once more because it's kind of cool when it looks like it's going to explode out of the pot. Alright. You didn't even hear it starting to go. Questions? Anything sound weird? Anything didn't make sense so far?
No. The scent is very different.
Can you see it going here?
Oh, it's gorgeous.
You can see the leaves just turning and furiously boiling. Alright. Now, just going to strain it off into the pot, hopefully without making too big a mess. I'm just going to give one big old stir before I start it. And hopefully, again, not making too big a mess. In reality, this is probably too big a strainer for this little tiny pot. That's what we had in the shop. You can already smell it. It's very, to me, a very wholesome sort of aroma. Somehow it's bringing back memories of childhood. I don't know if it's like vaguely reminiscent to cocoa or something. But the hot milk. And now the fun part. We get to try it. You know what? I've learned from a long time of having tea business. I should try things before I give it to customers, just in case it didn't work. And it's a different flavor. It is not tea with milk. This is not what this turns out to be. It's really hot, so you might want to blow it on it just a tidge.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah. Timothy, you give it a shot. Again, it's not just tea with milk, sir. I don't know if you can try it or not, sir. Very deep, rich, dark cocoa color to it.
Wow.
Wow, oh, that's...
Oh my, it's very smooth. And tastes nothing like chai.
It tastes nothing like chai. Of course, it doesn't have the spices. But to me, even the texture is different.
I agree.
It's much thicker than chai. Someone when I came back from the trip, the first thing I did, brought all the managers in. We did a little tasting with the managers. Again, I'm excited. This is cool. And somebody, I think Jess said, it's like one step away from pudding. You know, because it gets so thick and it gets so rich. And you can make adjustments on how much tea you put in. I put an extra spoon of tea because I like it strong. And it doesn't get overly sweet even, does it? It's just enough to kind of smooth it out.
It's really nice.
But it's so thick, it's so comforting. What else did I mention about milk tea? Unfortunately, we can never offer this in the store, so if there's any of the regular customers out there, my apologies. Make it at home, or invite me over and I'll teach you how to do it. The problem is we would have to bring in certified stoves, restaurant stoves, to be able to do this in the store, because you can't. I haven't been able to figure it out a way to do it out of hot water boilers. So we'll never do it in store. It's relatively easy. It's an inexpensive tea. Again, it's not a fancy tea, but a good quality breakfast Assam. Our tea, breakfast Assam, would be perfect for this. And questions, Timothy? Jen? Tom?
But if someone wanted to make it, will you carry some of the teas that we
Oh,
use?
the tea.
Probably not the tea from the garden that we came from, or that I made this from. This tea was made, here it is. This tea was made and was grown at the Naya-Gogra tea garden in relatively far eastern Assam. And, I don't know if you can see this, Sarah, this is the Naya-Gogra tea estate. I took this shot on the 21st, the day I tried this tea. Beautiful, beautiful. And Assam tea gardens are really cool because they go on forever. They look like they're never going to stop. It just rolls on to where the horizon meets the sky. Because Assam is pretty flat. It's relatively flat, so they just roll on and on and on. So that's where this, and unfortunately, or fortunately, Naya-Gogra is a huge tea garden, and it's owned by a huge tea company. Some people say the largest tea company in the world. They were nice enough to let me spend the night there and showed me around the next day. And they actually gave me some wonderful tea, but they're too big probably for me to ever buy from. I tend to focus on the small family farms. But you guys get to try some for being my guinea pigs and being here, and these are for you also.
Oh, thank you.
That's what a tea garden looks like. And this is what milk tea looks like, is prepared like, and tastes like. Anything else? Thank you guys for participating in the live stream. I appreciate it very much for being guinea pigs. We do this about once a month. We always announce live stream on Twitter, on Facebook, and on our blog. If you have suggestions,